Apogee Live with your hosts Greg, Cindy, and Daniel.
Join the video conference
And talk affiliate marketing each week with up to 50 others.
Let's start the show.
Thank you for joining Apogee Live. We've got a short crowd and a short day today. The Apogee team is out busy working. Cindy is sick. Kristen's got some meetings. And it's just Daniel and I today, and we're here to talk about data feeds. So we don't have anything from Apogee to talk about for our clients. We've got a couple of affiliates joining us, but this is all basically so we can put the information out on YouTube so affiliates can see this later. But I will let you know that you can join us every Wednesday at 2 o'clock for the live show, and we would love to see a couple dozen affiliates joining us. So let's go ahead and start, Daniel. Let's talk about data feeds. What do you have for us this week?
All right. Okay. So, did you hear a beep just then?
Yeah. Just a small beep. It's okay.
Oh man, this is going to be the story of our conference call. I think since we try to record these things, and it's just going to be one thing after another every week.
Ignore any
one thing or another every week. All right, so data feeds, right? I have some notes prepared. The question arose, I think, in our very first conference call, when we asked people, "What do you want future calls to be about?" The question arose, "Well, what about data feeds, and what do you do when you don't want to use one of the established services like FMTC or Golden Can or Pop Shops?" And I said, well, I can talk about that. It's kind of my thing. That's what I do for Apogee. I'm the CTO. I'm Chief Technology Officer. I manage the data feeds for all of our clients and things like that, among other things. So let's talk about how you can do that. So if you don't want to use a tool or a service, well, first let's talk about why you might want to use a tool or a service, right? Because while the upsides are they're generally easy to use, takes a lot of the guesswork out of page creation, they tend to be very plug and play, right? The downside to using these services are that you have to pay for what you get, right? You may be better served doing it on your own, depending on the project. If all you're looking to do is to drop a product in a widget on your page, maybe you don't need to pay for a service to do that for you. Maybe you can code that on your own. There are tools beyond just a paid service like that. There are tools you can use, software you can use to manipulate a data feed. One of them, I used to use this 10 years ago, I think. It's called Web Merge by Fourth World. You find them at fourthworld.com. It's Mac only, sorry. I'm sure there's something on Windows side that'll do the same thing. But go check that out and then look for a similar Windows application that purports to have the same features. So the upside to a piece of software like this is that you've got ultimate control over the creation of your page, right? It creates static pages out of a data feed. It'll take the data feed, all the rows, and it'll take all that data and plug it into a template that you create and spit out as many static HTML pages as you like. Now, the upside is that you do have ultimate control nearly down to the ones and zeros of the output, right? And the downside is that you've got ultimate control nearly down to the ones and zeros. It's a lot of work. So basically you do everything by hand, from the template creating to the modifications, uploading of the final files, everything. And be careful because you're dealing, like I said, with static pages. So everything, depending on how you handle your layouts, you might find that if you make a change, you end up having to re-upload all the pages, not just the one that you altered. That's the problem that I ran into when I was using this program, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And things are different now. I wasn't using WordPress back then, not as much anyway. So things have changed. I prefer to roll my own now. And that's what prompted this discussion, right? What if you don't want to use one of the tools or services? So let's talk about rolling your own solution. How do you do that? Well, this is a question. The answer really there's two roads you can travel, right? You need to work with the data feed that the network provides. You need to manipulate it and use that data on your site. And so the two roads would be you either hire someone to do that for you, or you learn how to program a bit yourself, right? You hire a programmer or a developer, or you learn how to do that yourself. Now, I'm not going to talk about, sorry?
I hired you.
Yeah, you hired me. That's right. You hired me to do that. I'm not going to talk about how to do that, how to hire a programmer or a developer. Because at that point, you might as well just use one of the services, get hooked up with FMTC or Golden Can or Pop Shops, one of those. And honestly, you're going to be saving money because programmers don't come cheap. If all you want to do is put some products on an affiliate website, hiring a programmer is going to run you more money than it's worth. So either go with a service or learn the joys of programming. And it's fun. It really is. I think it is. So what kind of programming do you need to learn to do it yourself? PHP or Python. Some people might recommend Python, but PHP will be more useful here because once you get rolling, you may find yourself digging into WordPress plugins and things like that. And those are all PHP. So PHP is what you want to go with, and it's shockingly easy to learn. If you've done any kind of web work, whether it's playing with WordPress, HTML, CSS, if you've done any customizing on your website at all, you've got some kind of introduction to learning how to code with PHP. It's not, you can make it as complicated as you want. You can code extraordinary applications with PHP, but the basics of it, just learning how to get text on the screen is really, really simple. So don't be intimidated. Creating your own database. Oh, I got ahead of myself. I'm going through my notes. Sorry. Right. Okay. So data feed, sorry. Downloading the feed and using PHP to upload it to your own database. Okay. So let me back up a little bit. PHP, learning PHP. What we're going to be doing is downloading data feed from the network. And in all of my examples here, everything that I talk about, this is all about ShareASale because that's what we specialize in with Apogee. And just know that although the format of the data feed at any other network will be different, the concepts that I'm talking about here will be exactly or nearly exactly the same. So when I tell you that the data feed has 51 columns at ShareASale, the data feed from another network will have a different number of columns. The columns will have different names. But when I explain how to get the data feed from your computer up onto your own database, right? Your database is going to have a table in it with some number of columns that have some headings, and those will be set by network. That make sense? I feel like I kind of mungled that one a little bit. But just understand that as I go through this, I'm doing it from a ShareASale perspective. But the concepts can be applied to anyone. All right. We're going to download the feed and then use PHP to upload it to your own database, right? So I like the MySQL or MySQL database, and you can pronounce it either way. I'm not going to get into a debate with anyone about how to pronounce it because the co-creator of the language actually said that either way is technically acceptable, although MySQL is a little bit more official. MySQL or MySQL is easy and widely used. There's a ton of documentation and a ton of tutorials out there about how to install it, how to use it, how to get it going on your own web server. It's really dead simple. If you've got cPanel or something like cPanel installed on your web server, and you probably do, especially if you're on shared hosting, you most likely have cPanel. It's like a 2-click install or something like that. It's just really simple. Click, done. You give it a name, and it's just that simple. They have a wizard to take you through it. Installing it, though, is beyond the scope of this discussion. But if you want to get with me later about that, we can have a little bit a one-on-one about how to do that. This only works. I already mentioned that. This only works for ShareASale data feeds because other networks have different formats. Oh, I'm going to show you. Okay, let's talk about the table. Now, you have a database that lives on a web server, okay? The ShareASale data feed has 51 columns. The database, the data feed rather, I'm going to share screen here, right? Text Wrangler, share screen. Now you should all be able to see, I wanted to start with this one. Can you all see a very messy looking text file right now?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of text in that file. It's all separated by the pipe character, which is that up and down line separating the various fields. Each of those blocks of text in between the pipe character is going to go in a column in the database table. Okay? The way we create the database table is with this block of code right here. And again, I can show you later on one-on-one, and I'll put this up on our website as well later on with some instructions about how to execute this code. This code right here has a list of all of the column names. So the first column is called product ID, right? The second column is called product name. Third column is merchant ID. And these correspond to all of the columns that are in the data feed. If you go back to the data feed here, you'll see this number right here at the front, 457850666. That's the product ID. The second one is the name of the product, and then the merchant ID number, and then the merchant name, California Wine Club. Those correspond with the column names. If I execute this code, it's going to put those columns into my database table. I will show you, I was going to show you later on, but I'll show you now as well. This is a piece of software called SQLPro for MySQL. I use this pretty extensively with our Apogee work. This is a demo database that I set up last night. I created a table called ShareASale data feeds in a database called Apogee demo. In this table, you can see here are all of my columns: product ID, product name, merchant ID, merchant name. I put all of these columns in there. I executed that code. I put them in my database. The type is integer, right? Float text, varchar or varchar, right? That's the type of data that it is. Now, if I just double click that, you can see them as columns down at the bottom half of the screen here, where it says product ID, product name, merchant ID, merchant name. Now it looks more like columns, right? Now, I'm going to show you in a little while how to get data into this database, this very database. Okay, back to here, back to my notes. Where are my notes? Oh, they've disappeared. There they are. Okay. Download the feed, create your own database, screenshot the text file. Last night, I whipped up a create table statement, which I just showed you. There are 51 columns in the data feed. There's two things I didn't get to before this call because I ran out of time. One was organizing my notes. All right. Once you have the table set up in your database, you need to get some data into it. And to begin with, you grab a data feed from any ShareASale merchant that you're signed up with. There's two ways to do that. Manually, you can log into ShareASale, and you go to links, get a banner, or get a link/banner, and then get links for the program that you want. If there's a data feed, there'll be a tab that says data feed products. Click that. And then you'll see a link next to the search box that says download CSV. You click that and it'll download. On the next page, there's a link where it says click here to download. Click that and then it downloads. It's kind of a convoluted process to get the data feed to download. There's like several pages to get to it, but it is what it is. You can also use FTP to get a data feed. And here's the thing about that though. FTP access is granted by request only, network rules. And as managers, we're a little picky about who gets access because there's a cost to our clients. But we'll never say no to someone who has a genuine use for FTP. So make sure when you apply for access, you give us a sentence or two explaining your intentions. And if you leave that box blank, we're just going to deny you. So tell us what you're going to do with your FTP access. And it doesn't have to be a big paragraph, explanation. It just something simple, just a couple sentences. If we deny you and you want to appeal that, just hit reply on the email that you get saying that you've been denied and talk to us and we'll work it out. Where to apply for FTP access? Merchants, view merchants with data feeds. This is how I think in my head. Click on merchants and then click on view merchants with data feeds and then do a keyword search and then limit it to programs that you've already joined and then click the checkbox that says check to apply for FTP access. And then right below that, there's a little box where you can type in your explanation of why you want access. And then right below that, there's a button that says apply. Just click that. All right, so once you've applied for FTP access and once you've been approved for FTP access, you can fire up any FTP client you like. I use Transmit on the Mac. Greg, do you use FTP at all? For anything?
No, that's why I have you.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody?
Does anybody in the room use FTP for anything that on the Windows side that has a recommendation for an FTP client for Windows?
I used to use FileZilla.
FileZilla, okay.
Podcasts.
Yeah.
Long.
Okay. All right, cool.
I used to use it years ago on CJ, but it's probably been a dozen years or so, 10 years.
Okay, right on. I'll look up a few recommendations as well and post them on the website later on when I post all the rest of the links and things when I post the video. Where's my notes? I got to get multiple screens, man. I'm being buried in Windows here. Okay, so once you've got your data feed and once you've been approved for FTP access, you can reach out with your favorite FTP client, grab the data feed, bring it down to your computer, and now it is time to manipulate that feed, get it into your database, right? We've created the database on your web server, right? Or at least, I mean, I know I skipped that part because I said it was beyond the scope of this call, but let's pretend you've done that. You've created a table with the appropriate number of columns, and I showed you that code, and that code is going to be on our website as well, so you can execute that code and create the table to hold the data. So let's get some data into that table, right? First thing, you need to put your affiliate ID into that data feed file. Otherwise, you're not going to get credit for anything, any traffic you drive. Replace all instances of your user ID in all caps with your ID number, your affiliate ID number. You can do this now in a text editor. There's a plain text editor, by the way. Don't use Word or anything like that because it'll really screw up the formatting of the file. It has to be a plain text editor. Notepad on Windows. I think it's called Notepad, right, on Windows? I haven't used Windows in 11 years, guys. Is it TextPad? Notepad? What do you call it? Notepad, thank you. I use Text Wrangler on my Mac, but any plain text editor will work. Replace your user ID with your affiliate ID number. Or you can do that later with a PHP script. And if you're going to go the way of automation, and you really should, you can do that later in your PHP script. Before I talk about the PHP script, though, I want to show you a fast way to get a data feed file inserted into that table. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where I showed you earlier that application, that SQLPro, right? This is so cool. And I just started using this program recently, like a couple of weeks ago. I just discovered it. So, okay. We have the ShareASale data feeds table. I want to import a data feed. I have one on my desktop from the California Wine Club. I'm going to import, watch this, import from CSV. Now, here's the thing about, I got to mention, if you're going to do this with any application, not just this, but any application, it might require a header line with the column names in it. If your application does require that, I can talk to me about it if you have any trouble, because I ran into this last night myself when I was testing this. It's best if the column names match the, it's best if the row you insert into your CSV text file matches the row names that are, the column names that are in your table. Just, it'll make it easier for the application to match things up. So if I choose 10286.csv here, which is the merchant ID number, and I go open, you'll see here it's going to import 63 rows, which is the number of products that are in the data feed. It's going to import it into ShareASale data feeds, which is the table. But hang on a second, I want to do it into the import table because that's the second table that I'm using here. That's the, I'm going to put more data into the other table later on. Import source is product ID, target column is product ID. See, they match, right? I'm just going to click import. Import successful. And now I'm going to refresh. Right there. Done. Right now, on our Apogee web server, we now have the California Wine Club's data feed living out there on the web server, ready to be used on my website. Well, I don't have a website, but if I had a website, I could totally use it on my website, right? And I want to specify too, because this is important. Here's the link. This is the affiliate link right here in this column here. You'll see it's ShareASale.com. Merchant ID is in there. The user ID is 178. That's not my user ID. My user ID is different. The 178 is ShareASale's affiliate ID. So I'm not actually putting my affiliate links out there. That would be unethical. I just want you all to know that I'm not doing that. So yeah, but if I had a website, if I was promoting the California Wine Club, I would now have their data feed up on the website, ready to go, up on the web server, ready to be manipulated and have products put on my website. It's that simple. If I wanted to make it a little bit more complicated, if I wasn't using this application, for example, let's go ahead and close that. Let's talk about PHP. Okay. Okay. Earlier, I baked a script at 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and this is how it came out. You're supposed to laugh at that, man. Oh, thank you very much. Share screen. There we go. All right. This is an application called Phpstorm, which is a wonderful IDE for developing PHP applications. And this is a script I whipped up last night. People looking at this script who are better programmers than me will find better ways to do what I've done here. And that's cool. With programming, there are 1,000 ways to do anything. And I did this in like 20 minutes. So it's not elegant. I want to show you, though, how easy this is. Now, I'm including, at the top here, I'm including another file. And that in PHP, when you include a file, you have a file, you have another file over here. That file over here, it's like it lives on top of the other file. It literally gets included with the first file that you're executing, right? And it basically means that I get to hide things from you guys. And the things that I'm hiding right now are my database login information because I don't want to show that to everybody. So I'm requiring my database demo file that has all my login information. My Datafeed directory where I'm storing the data feed is on my desktop. The name of the file is 10286.csv. And then I give my application a little bit of information about the CSV file. I tell it that it is separated by the pipe character. I tell it that the new line character is a \n. Okay, that's standard for PHP. And then I tell it that the combined location, the full path to the file, is my directory plus the file name. The dot in the middle there is concatenation. It means you jam those two things together. The reason I did that is because now it makes it easier for me to just go, well, 10286, I'm just going to change that. 54365. There's Sears Parts Direct. I just change one variable, and it allows me to update the rest of I just change one thing in one place instead of worrying about changing multiple things in multiple places, right? Anyway, let's go back to 10286. All right, so I check to make sure that the file is there. I check to make sure it can be opened. And I check to make sure that it's not empty. And then, let's see, I get about 23 lines of code. And some of that is comments, is all it takes to get this Wine Club data feed up into the table on the database. So it'll go through line by line. It will add a slash for all of these single quotes because you have to do that when you're dealing with MySQL and PHP and inserting things. It'll jam everything down into one line and then insert it, and that's it. I mean, it's magic. I love it. I'm going to execute this code right now. First, I want to show you that this is like when the magician shows you there's nothing in the hat. Hang on. Where's my, oh geez, hang on. I minimized it. Can't minimize it. Learning how to use the software. Okay. The ShareASale data feeds table is empty, okay? This is an empty table on my web server. In my demo database on my web server, it is empty. And now I will go back to Phpstorm and I will execute this code, this 60-line bit of code. I will execute it and I hope this works. Datafeed insert success. Okay, stop that. Let's go back to that. And I'll refresh this. And now it's full. Ta-da! That's it. That's how you do it. So all of this code will be on our website, along with some more instruction about how to execute it and how to use it, because I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. And what takes me half an hour to explain will actually take about, I don't know, a paragraph probably to work out. So there's that. So let's see here.
You're such a nerd.
I know. Oh, lay off. You hired me. All right. Let me go back to my notes. Let me just make sure. Now, okay. All right. So that's PHP, right? So like I said, what that code does is it reads the data feed file line by line and then inserts all of it into the database. And then you rinse and repeat for every merchant that you're involved with. And some people are involved with dozens or more, hundreds sometimes, of merchants. So as a programmer, anytime someone says, repeat to me, I just want to automate something. So think about all of the steps that I just described, right? From using FTP to download the data feed, to putting your affiliate ID into the data feed, and inserting things into the table, and then doing all of that for every merchant. All of that can be done programmatically with loops. So a loop in PHP, or any language really, is just you give your script a list of the merchants, and you tell it, for every merchant on this list, go get the data feed file, put my affiliate ID in the file, and then insert each line in the file into the database. And you can do that for 100 or 1,000 merchants with only one little block of code. That little 60-line block of code I showed you is all you need. You wrap that in a loop. It takes another like 4 or 5 lines of code to wrap it in a loop, if that. Actually, it would take another, I guess, 3 lines of code to wrap it in a loop. You do that, and you can do it for an unlimited number of merchants that you're working with. That 60 plus lines of code. And you add in the ability, you can, PHP, you add in the ability to automatically grab things using FTP, automatically insert your affiliate ID using PHP, easy. That's basic text file manipulation using search and replace, not a problem. All of that can be wrapped up in a PHP script that's probably, I would wager, less than 100 lines long. Certainly less than 150 lines long, I would think. So now you have all this lovely data up in your database. And how do you make use of it on your site? Well, reading data from the database is even easier than inserting it. And I said that there were 2 things that I didn't do, that I didn't have time for. I ran out of time before we got to the call. One of them was organizing my notes, and the second one was writing a file that would demonstrate how to get something from the database onto a web page. The process is not very dissimilar from what I showed you in the PHP file, though. The file that lives on your web server, on your website, right, is going to have PHP in it. Only instead of saying replace into, which is the SQL call, the SQL statement that we used to put things into, you're going to say select. Select, I use an asterisk to mean all, from, and then the database name, and then use the keyword where, and then just give it some parameters. Where merchant ID equals 10286. And it's going to give you it's going to return a list of all the products from that merchant. And then you can use your file, your PHP script that you're running on your web server to search those pieces of data, find the product you want to display on your website, and display it, right? Because remember, all of your, let's see here, I minimize it again. Hang on. Learning to use the software. Remember that all of your product information is here in the database. So you got the product name in a field called product name. You have the link, the thumbnail image, the big image, the price, the description. It was last updated on this date. It's in stock, the manufacturer, and things like that. So you would say, select all from ShareASale data feeds, being the name of the table, where merchant ID, right, which is a column here, where merchant ID equals 10286, and product ID equals 514537884. That will return in an object all of the data that's associated with that product. And now you can manipulate that data and put that data on your website. And that's all I got.
Okay, so that basically tells everybody how to create a data feed for how to use the data feed and put those product images and descriptions on their website. And I think that's a great definition of how they can do that, because there's so many affiliates that don't understand the data feed at all. Mm-hmm. So we went through the exercise. Now, earlier we were talking to Marcia. She's on the call right now. I'm not going to put her on the spot, but I'm going to say she said she's never used the data feed.
Right.
And she doesn't know how to use the data feed. Right. But she has been using the data feed because she's been using the different tools in networks such as ShareASale to where she wants to highlight one specific product. Mm-hmm. And so she's using the product bookmarklet. She's using the, Marcia, what tool was it you were using?
The bookmarklet.
Bookmarklet, okay. So you want to highlight one specific product, and all of that information is coming from the data feed. So you're actually using it. You're just using a tool through the network.
Well, my question is, why would I go through all of that rigmarole that Daniel just explained, rather than just pull the picture up, pull the link, and now it's in my WordPress.
And that's a good question. So, and the reason is the data feeders that have been doing this a long time, they're building pages that have hundreds of products or thousands of products. They're building websites where they're comparing products in different categories, and they're building the site based on the products. They're not just highlighting one product. So bloggers and social media affiliates could use the tools, or they could learn how to go into the network and use the information in the data feed from one specific product to promote that. Or if they want to build a site or a page that has multiple products, this is when you go through the programming part and you actually automate it.
Right.
So we do have two other data feeders on there. Phil or Buck, do you want to talk about how you've used data feeders real quick?
Well, I've changed a lot over the years. Years ago, I had a guy that put a system together for me that I used extensively on large sites. Now I'm much more into blogging and specific products, and I'm able to take stuff either from the data feed, or I really do like the bookmark. I use that a lot now. So, I'm interested in rebuilding some of my older sites and using a more up-to-date system for what you're talking about, using the hundreds or thousands of products again, updating what I had before in, like you said, either comparison or a hierarchy of products that fit a story or an article that I've written. But mostly the last couple of years, I have used, taken either individual products from the data feed or use the bookmarklet, and other networks now have similar tools that I find really advantageous now for the way I've changed my basic paradigm of my recent sites.
Okay.
I would say that the tools that are provided by the networks, I can't speak to any of them other than ShareASale. The ones from ShareASale are very good. They do fall into the same, I don't want to say category, but they do have the same limitations as any of the tools from places like FMTC or Golden Can or Pop Shops, where you give up some measure of control, or there are some limitations. When I went to use, I'm not gonna name them, but when I went to use one of the services to put some data feed based information on the Apogee site, I ran into issues that I couldn't overcome and they were just limitations that were built into the platform. And I'm going to end up rolling my own. I just wasn't satisfied with what they were able to provide. The network tools are great, and they run off of the data feeds, but they give you things, the output they give you, you're limited in some ways. With what I'm describing, especially what I was describing at the end, where you've got everything in your own database, and now you're free to use that in any way you like, because you're not limited to, you're not required to go back to the network for anything anymore. You can automate all of that to refresh your own database automatically daily, right? And you can hit your own database as many times as you want. And it's going to be lightning fast because it's on the same server as your website. You can then take and use all of your knowledge and skill to put together whatever template you want on your website. You can make that data fit anywhere you want. If what you're getting from the network or anywhere doesn't quite fit in your sidebar quite the way you want it to, you're not limited like that if you're rolling your own. It does mean more work, and it does mean you need to know how to program a bit yourself. And like I said, the tools you get from ShareASale are great. They are inherently a bit limiting because every tool is. But this is my opinion.
All right.
I always love rolling my own stuff anyway. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
It sounded bad.
Anyone? All right. I think we can wrap this up. Daniel, thank you very much for all the time you put into it.
You're welcome.
We will need to discuss in the private Facebook group on what our topic will be next week. And I think are we skipping next week?
I think we are actually, because it's the first of the month. Yeah.
Right. So
that's report day.
Yeah, report day. Our next conversation is going to be in 2 weeks,
Yep.
and that is going to be the 8th, I think.
Yep.
And we will figure out what we're going to be talking about. Oh, I think we might
Jerry.
have Jerry from the California Wine Club. I think she might want to actually be on the call and answer questions about the company and talk about the company history. So that should be exciting. Hopefully we can get her on there and we can get some more people on the call. All right. Thank you very much for joining us on Apogee Live.
This was
Apogee Live. Apogee Live. Visit apogeeagency.com/clients to view our list of managed affiliate programs.
Remember to hit reply on any of our emails and we'll respond.
See you next week.